Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Selma Avdic, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, I want to welcome you all to our webcast, which is in partnership with Mongoose, entitled How Texting Increases Engagement and Enrollment Yield. So before we get started, I just wanted to cover a few important housekeeping items. So this webcast is being recorded and will be made available to you soon. We also encourage you all to continue this conversation on Twitter, and you can do so by referencing hashtag #AMAMongoose. And if you have any technical or content-related questions, please feel free to ask them at any time. And this is located in the left-hand side, and we are happy to assist. And so with that, I am pleased to introduce our speakers. Again, my name is Selma Avdic with the American Marketing Association, and today we are joined by Dave Marshall, who is the president of Mongoose, and he is also the product manager for Mongoose's industry-leading text messaging platform. Also, in his previous role, Dave was the co-founder of Liquid Matrix, which modernized enrollment marketing. He's also actively involved in the industry through writing articles, speaking at conferences, and leading workshops. And we also have Jim Wiseman with us, and he is the vice president of enrollment at Carroll University. And Jim has worked in the enrollment area of higher education for 33 years. And he has also served at Carroll University in Wisconsin for the last 23 years as their Chief Enrollment Officer. So during his tenure at Carroll, the university has had a 169% increase in enrollment, which is incredible. In addition, the average ACT score has increased, and retention and graduation rates have improved. So we definitely have two experts with us, and again, we're so pleased to have them share their insight. With that, I will now turn it over to Dave to get us started.
Thank you, Selma, and thank you, everybody, for joining today. A little bit of history. I actually just went back through my email and found that on December 30th, 2014, I sent Jim the agreement to build a new platform that would allow him to have text conversations with students, and it was largely his idea. We had a texting platform prior to that was much more of a broadcast kind of way to get text out to a lot of students to announce things, but it was in no way a conversational tool, and he had the idea, and by July 2015, so 6 months, he went live, and he was the first school to go live on that platform, and now we work with over 200 schools, and I say that not so much as to promote our brand, but we've really seen what works and what does not work, and those are the types of things that we hope to share with you today. So with that, often we are asked, well, can I text students? Do I have to get them to opt in? Do they opt out? What does the law say? So I'm going to cover that. Jim is going to cover the status of what is the reality right now in higher ed. He's going to review keys that his institution uses to meet their enrollment goals. I'm going to then talk about, from a content perspective, what works in this medium and kind of how you should try to structure these. Content matters a lot, so I'm going to go over that. And then we're going to go back to Jim and talk about how his team could text students and the engagement that came out of that. And when it all comes down to it, it's about results. And so Jim will review what he's seen. So with that, can we just go ahead and text students? That's a very simple question with a little bit more of a complex answer. So to give you some background, the law of the land is the TCPA. It's the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. That came out in 1991, and that prohibited brands from using an automated technology to call consumers. So if people on this call were around in the 80s and you remember your home phone that had a cord and it would ring and it would be an automated thing saying you should buy a vacuum or insurance, and it was really bad, and the TCPA came out in 1991 to stop using it, to stop brands from using an automated technology to call consumers. That was then updated in 2013 to cover mobile phones and the ability to text. So if you are a for-profit brand, you had to adhere to restrictions within the TCPA if you're going to use any automated technology to text a consumer. So the part of that, though, is if you're a nonprofit, you are largely exempt from the restrictions. And with working with over 200 schools and seeing their legal teams look at the law, they almost always come back and say, well, yeah, you can do that. You don't even really need an opt-in. So the answer for everyone on this call that's in higher ed is yes, you can just go text students. So the conversation says, will then change from can I? Well, sure. Should you? That's a much more important question. The mobile phone is a very personal space, and if you are going to text students things that aren't important to them, or perhaps if they didn't ask for it, you run the risk of hurting your brand more than you are going to help it. And if you do it too much, they're no longer going to look at it. You might get blocked, things like that. We've all seen what's happened in higher ed with email, and anyone at the school could email students and they get so much that they just don't check their email. So we don't want that to happen. So if it's used well, and that's why we're here today, to talk about how to use it well, you can experience incredible results from an enrollment perspective and student outcomes. So that's why we're here to talk about how to do it well. So our clients often ask us, well, should we get an opt-in? And I say, sort of, yes. And then we talk about, well, who is this? So if you're buying names for student search, you should never text them. They didn't ask for it. It'd be rare that you actually have their mobile number anyway. But that is not, you should not text with those students. Now, if there's an inquiry, I would say that consent is required in order to text with them. Today in higher education, there's so many soft inquiries that students inquire to 20 schools and they didn't even know that they did. So if all of a sudden they start to get texts from schools that they don't know, that's going to hurt you more than it's going to help. But if on your inquiry form you ask for mobile phone number, not just phone, mobile phone, and then you give them a little box where they could opt in, that would be really helpful. So, and then at the applicant stage, you are able to assume that unless you're a state school that has a lot of soft apps from a state app or that kind of thing, that if they did apply to your school and they gave you their mobile, you don't have to actually get the opt-in. Some of our clients do, some of our clients don't. And then when you get to the accept and confirm stage, it's not a requirement, but it depends on the school. Now, you should only text when it's valuable and helpful and relevant. to that student. So just because you can does not mean that you should. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to talk about the status of higher ed.
Thanks, Dave. Well, you'd think after 33 years I would have seen it all, but I just discovered in the last few years that I have not. So S is all sort of, we're in a unique time in higher ed, and I'm going to just go this quickly because if you're in higher ed, you know this firsthand. We have a situation where the supply of seats available in higher ed are greater than the demand. And that has not happened since World War II era for higher education. So we have more seats than we do people to fill those seats. Another thing that is happening, as everybody knows, is higher ed is becoming, by a lot more students and parents, they view higher ed as a commodity and not as a differentiated product. And those are not good things for higher education, because when it becomes a commodity, it becomes solely based on price, and that's not good in terms of, for us, in enrollment. With that, I think, what we've got is, historically, when you have less customers, they tend to be less activities. So you'd have less inquiries, less applications, less visitors. All of those things would go down as the funnel sort of shrunk. But we've got this unique situation where we have less customers, but yet their activity for buying and behavior for buying is greater. We actually have situations where we have less customers, but we have more inquiries, more applicants, more visitors, and more FAFSAs being filed than ever before. At Carroll last year, we set records in every one of those categories. So it's an unusual dynamic, and a lot of that has happened because of the fact that technology has made it easier and easier for students to shop and parents. Institutional policies and procedures, schools have gone to the Quick app, where they pre-populate inquiries for the forms for search. They've eliminated essays. Some people are test optional. So it's become a situation where we've made it a lot easier for students for all the right reasons, and so this smaller pool of students is behaving, and they're basically searching and going through the process at a greater numbers. Now those greater numbers have consequences for us in higher education. One is it's really hard to identify who's interested anymore, because applications are more like inquiries were 15 years ago. And so what's happening is all our key performance indicators yields are really low. So it's really hard to know which students are serious about you and which ones aren't serious. Another aspect is that's happening is all of this extra inquiries and applications and visitors and FAFSAs, it takes manpower and IT power to process them. So the cost to enroll a student is actually going up at the very time our enrollments and our funding at the institution is going down. So that's always a very difficult situation where you have costs going up and your funding going down. It makes it really hard to know how you're going to go forward. So with that, let's go to, sorry about that, technologically challenged. There we go. Nope. My slides, there we go. Sorry about that, folks. So the keys to meeting our enrollment target. So the first key for us was we went into this with a very simple plan. One is, how can we be more predictive on which students to enroll? And two is, how can we create quality engagement? So let's start with the predictive portion. What we found out is that the key performance indicators, as I just mentioned, are less predictive than they've ever been. In my 33 years, I've never seen yield rates on these key performance indicators be so low. But we also know that the engagement characteristics of the student are more predictive. So things like, did they opt in for text? Do they open their portal as an inquiry? How many opened emails do they have? Do they join online communities? So then we took those key engagement indicators and combined it with the key performance indicators like visits, applications, admits, and all the traditional ones that we did, and we created a model that said, okay, now we know pretty much which ones we can target if we combine those two. The engagement ones, when you run it through all the statistics, the engagement ones actually predict better than do the old key performance indicators. So the times have changed where now we're more onto the engagement. The second piece is engagement. And for us, what is engagement? It's two-way conversation. So when a student and a counselor has a two-way conversation between the institution and the prospective student or parent, that is called an engagement for us. Quality engagement is where we are able to differentiate our institution from other institutions, or we are able to collect what their needs, wants, and expectations are, and then show them how our institution can meet those key indicators. So we're all about what's the needs, wants, and expectations, and then how can we demonstrate to them how we can meet that. And that takes two-way conversation. Sending a brochure out probably is not going to do it. One-way email traffic is not going to do it. So we felt very strongly that we need to increase this the quality of the engagement in terms of the two-way conversations. So for engagement for us, we look at it as a paradigm. At the top of the pyramid is the quality of the engagement. For us, it all centers on needs, wants, expectations, and differentiating the institution. The better we are at that and the higher we get there, the easier we are to change behind behaviors. Then there is volume, and then there is efficiency. Volume is how many times do you need to go to them and engage in them in order to accomplish your goals. If the quality is low, your volume tends to be high. If your volume is low, your quality needs to be high. So there's a balancing act. Efficiency is probably the most underrated thing that we have in higher ed in terms of our admissions, in terms of time the counselors spend to have a quality engagement. So how many times and how much time do they spend trying to create a quality engagement? We need it to be very efficient to be effective. So we rate all of our engagement methods by using this pyramid. So when we think about it, there's two initiators of engagement. One is the prospective student and the family reaching out to us, which is the best of all worlds. They tend to have high quality because they come to us with a purpose, usually dealing with their needs, wants, and expectations. The efficiency is high because they're telling us you're not chasing them down, you're not sending out thousands of emails to get one response. It's really efficient. The volume is really low. Unfortunately, not enough families take us up on that and engage, so the volume is relatively low. To have an effective student-initiated type program, you need 4 ingredients. You need to provide students and parents with a wide range of opportunity and platforms to engage with you. Because every family, every student is different. Some like email, some like telephone, some like text. So it just depends. You need to have a wide variety in order to engage. You need to encourage the self-engagement. So business cards should have text numbers and obviously emails on everything nowadays. Should always have your text. Every email you send should have your text numbers. So we put it on everything we do, forms. Anything we do, we try to create this self-initiated engagement. We also learned that through these engagements, we always should never try to cut off conversations, but we should extend the conversations. Try and reach further into the needs, wants, and expectations to figure out exactly what are all the needs, wants, and expectations. So anytime you respond, we give really precise answers, really short answers, but we always leave it as an open-ended or ask a question at the end so we continue the conversation. And then in today's world, response time is really important. When someone engages with you, it's really critical that you get back to them as soon as possible. So our counselors know that response time is critical. And so I'm really flexible with schedules. I don't view counselors as working 8 to 4:30 anymore. I view counselors as sort of having a very flexible schedule in terms of to respond to when they contact them. Then there's the institution-initiated engagements, and those are the harder ones, right? Because we're coming out of the blue and sort of hitting them. So most individual visits to campus are set up by the parents or the students, and so they initiated it. But in this case, we have a face-to-face contact as counselors or the high school visits or the college fairs. And it varies a lot. You know, in one case, I've got the case up here where we have a low quality because we have a high volume. There's 50 students in the room. You're not going to know needs, wants, and expectations. You're not going to be able to, it's very difficult to differentiate your institution until you understand what they're looking for in an institution. Efficiency is terrible in all these because the reality is you've got to set up the visit, then you've got to get in your car, you've got to drive, and in some cases it's 2-3 hours to drive, and you might hit 3 schools in that day. So really poor efficiency. Now we do them to generate interest. We do them because it serve a purpose. Now you may have just the opposite. You may go to a school where you have really low volume and really high quality because it's 2 kids. So it just depends on that situation. Another form, of course, is phone. You know, 20 years ago, phone was everything. Everything was phone. Then the cell phones came out, and all of a sudden what you're getting is really low efficiencies. For every 100 phone calls, we complete 12 to 15 where we have an engagement. So that's a lot of time spent calling people with not getting anybody because on their cell phone they are actually screening us, and they know. And it's not that they are throwing you out by not answering the phone. It's just that they may be busy, and these students are really busy these days, and they're only going to take those calls if it's an absolute thing that they have free time at that point in time. So phone, yeah, it's losing some of its effectiveness. We still do it. We still have campaigns that require counselors to phone, but it's smaller and smaller because it's so inefficient. Email, 10 years ago, email was all the rage. And unfortunately, us in higher ed sort of blew it because we figured out how to spam them and send bulk emails that are very impersonal. We can drop their name in, sure. You can drop bits and pieces in, but these students are pretty wise with emails. And so what the students did is they said, okay, I'm going to set up a separate email account for my college search, which in some cases they check once every week or once every couple of weeks. So you're not getting huge responses there. Now the higher up, the lower they get in the funnel, so the accepted students or to parents, your response rates do go up. But overall, our response rates to email is about 20 to 25%. It has dropped in about 5 years. It's dropped almost 10 percentage points because everybody's doing the same thing. So they have more schools that they've looked at, applied to. Everybody's emailing them. So basically what they're doing is sort of checking out in terms of email is a tougher thing to do. You can definitely give high volume on the emails. You can definitely, the quality is a little suspect unless someone comes with specific questions from an email. Another one is just sort of the online communities or the social. The Facebook has been sort of, people join Facebook after they've decided to come. So it doesn't serve a lot of purpose in terms of how you can spend time to create students that want to come to your institution. This one is one to watch, though, because there are companies now creating these online communities that are separate from Facebook. It's going to be an interesting to watch. But right now, it's a low quality, low volume, middle efficiency. And finally, we get to texting. So texting is the new one now. I think it's by far the best in terms of the efficiency. Counselors absolutely love it, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. We get about 40 to 45% response rates, and the volume can be high, but then the quality would drop off. So we keep our volume really quite low, medium to low, because we only do personal. We do not do big blasts or auto text anybody. There are 2 exceptions that I'll explain later, but most part it's very small volumes that we are dealing with, or medium volumes, to make them very personal. So that drives the quality up. I think the other thing with quality is that the answers are very short and succinct, and students love that. Okay, Dave, you're on.
Thank you, Jim. For those of you that wanted to make sure you heard him right, 40 to 45% response rate on text. That is just that's impossible to get in any other medium. We've had schools do even higher than that choose to do a lower volume and carefully craft what they write. And we have schools that do lower than that because they're a larger school and they almost don't want a reply. They just wanted to communicate something. So, but this is a medium where if you want to start a conversation, you are absolutely able to do that. And we have seen one of our schools had one person that wrote a letter in Microsoft Word and did copy, paste, and sent the whole thing by text via our platform, like with sincerely, and the whole thing that was in there. And then we have other schools that really do it well, and they're just naturally able to kind of manage those text conversations, and that's really where we want to be. So to explain how this is set up, and this is not just with our tool, with whoever you want to use, you want to use what's called a long code, or what humans call a phone number. And that phone number should be in the area code of your institution, so that you can promote it, and you can say text me or call me, and it's at one phone number. So when the student receives the text from you, they imagine that you took your phone out and you typed in their name and typed in the whole thing. And if you ask them a question, there's almost this inherent obligation to send a response back. So they might write back and say, I chose not to come to your school. And that's great. That's fantastic, because then you can spend time on those who still might want to come. So it's just a great way to engage the student. So this is an example of what not to do, and then what to do. So we have Utah College, which by the way is not a real school. We made that up. But here's what not to do. Utah College, you have applied, but we have not received your transcript. Reply stop to end, standard message rates apply. Well, the only thing that did was tell them that they haven't received the transcript. If the student was planning on sending it in, they're not going to send a response. And if they don't want to go to the school, they're not going to send a response. So what you should do then is, hi, Chris, it's Steph again from UC. Looking at your file, I see you applied, but we have not received your transcript. Are you still interested? Please let me know. So that's a much better way to communicate. You're not shortening words. You're not truncating words. I don't think that you should limit yourself to 160 characters. It's very hard to sound personable and sound human with that restriction. So this is a text. We changed the name of the student, but this was one that Derek Brown works for Jim, and he was just fantastic right out of the gates as to how to craft these. So, hi, Kelly, acceptance letters are being printed and will be mailed tomorrow, but I want to be the first to tell you you have been accepted, and then I changed the name of the school. And then, so what a fantastic way to continue the relationship that you're having with that student. The student not only is going to be excited, and they might write back with an emoji, they might write back with questions, but they feel like they already have a friend or someone at the school that's almost going to look out for them. So their odds of trusting that school and being having a desire to go to that school go up. So not everybody is staffed to have one-on-one text conversations with all of these inquiries and all of these apps and accepts and confirms. So there are ways that you can automate this. You could mail merge a student's name in there, and you could send it to 25 students or 100 students, and you could still have the tone be very friendly, but then at the same time, if you ask for a response, you're probably going to get one. So you have to think about volume. So then on the other side, if you just want to send a text that's like a transaction, like credit card charged or something like that, or reminder event on Friday at 9, you should not pretend to be a person. You should say this is an automated text, or put the name of your school, announcement, or something like that. So that way the student is not confused as to, is this a person, is this not a person, and they know just how to act. They know that they're not going to respond and hope for a response back. They know that all it is to tell them what they need to do. If you are looking at getting into like AI and having a bot that's going to talk back and forth, that's fantastic. That's new. That's here now. People enjoy asking Alexa or Siri, things, but they don't do it thinking that it's a human. They do it thinking that that they know that it's a bot, right? So just be really clear with, if it's really you, then tell them it's you, and if it's not, don't act like it is. So Jim actually has 2 automated texts that he uses. One is that when the financial aid award is completed, there is an automated text that goes out from somebody in financial aid saying, I saw that you viewed, this is when they actually view it. I saw that you viewed your award. Do you have any questions? Please let me know. And then the student thinks that was not an automated text, and that if they do write back, someone's going to write back to them. And there's so many misperceptions about affordability in higher ed now. So being able to text them right after they view that and start a conversation is really great. And the other one that Jim has is that after they visit the school, there's an automated text that comes from Jim, and he says, "Hi, this is Jim Wiseman. I hope you enjoyed your day. Could you please rate your experience on a scale from 1 to 5?" And they write back because it's top of mind. They just got done with their tour and their day, and they might want to ask things. So they'll most of the time they write 5, but when they don't, Jim can say, "Hey, well, what could we do to improve?" So again, it's automated, but it's not impersonal, and that's really key. Also, when it comes to content, you should prepare your team with what the expectations are. At what point in our comm flow or your comm flow should you text? And you should actually pre-write these texts so that you're not leaving it up to everybody to write their own. Not everybody is a really good copywriter. So if you can kind of say, this is what we send at this point, and this is what we send at this point, you can do it for them. And then their job becomes kind of managing the responses back, not coming up with what they should text or when they should. So I encourage you to look at your own comm flow, and don't look at this medium as being in a silo. You should look at it as being part of everything else that you do. And with that, Jim, back to you to talk about texting and engagement.
All right, Dave. So when we talk about texting, the first thing is with us is that the opt-in is in of itself very predictive. It's part of the reason the opt-in is becoming so predictive is there's like a double screening mechanism. So first we get the opt-in, and at Carroll we require the opt-in of all students throughout the funnel, because we are using it to identify which students are most interested. So it helps, it feeds us knowledge that says, okay, this student's really interested. Then when they opt in, we text them, and then once they reply, that is by far the most predictive thing we have. So they've opted in and then they replied to us. That actually they get some of the highest weight values in our predictive score is that combination of things. And then the campus visit actually is a distance third, which used to always be the visit was number one. But since we've done texting and the way we do texting, it has become the number one predictive way. Once they start replying and having this engagement with us, we know we've got someone with high interest. Text creates engagement on average for us. So we look at it each week. So it's all changed. Like in the last 2 years, we don't care how many emails get sent. We don't care how many phone calls counselors attempt. We only care about quality contacts, which means two-way conversations. So on average for us, we need 6+ quality contacts to enroll a student. So that is our goal. So every student that we admit, we're looking for that. Now, we'll start earlier in the funnel at inquiry, but they usually will drop off. If they drop off the part, then they'll never get to 6. So it usually takes them moving through the funnel to get to 6 quality contacts. Of those 6 quality contacts, anywhere from 3 to 4 of those quality contacts come from texting. And again, the response rate in terms of our counselor's time, it's a 40 to 60% response rate. Again, the lower they get in the funnel, the better the response rate gets. So when we get down towards admitted and they've got an 8 award and they visited, you're looking at 60% response rates. Email response rates will go up too as you get lower in the funnel, but they'll never even touch the 40% currently. And of course, the phone is really difficult still. So it does create sort of an ideal type of engagement for us. So why is texting students so student and family friendly, and why do they like it so much? Well, one is you're dealing in their world. So this is a really safe, something they can trust in, it's comfortable for them, and it makes total sense. It empowers them, it gives them the control. They feel like they're still in control. Messages are usually short and to the point, which they like a lot. They're not intimidating. It's very efficient and very easy and accessible for them. So we get a lot of text over lunch hours. You can tell when students are at their lunch hour, all of a sudden we'll get some text. Or study halls. Or things like that. You'll see texts come in at certain periods of time in the day.